I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm very happy to be joined today by my brother, Father Philip Marie of the CMRI. Now, Father Philip has worked the last several years. Father, you were ordained in 2018, right?
Right.
And even before that, I think you were working with young adults, especially young boys, right? Young, I guess, teenage boys mostly, up in Idaho and then in Spokane. I think that's where you are now. Is that right?
Right. Well, yeah, I guess even in Minnesota, I was sent up there to be dean of discipline when I was a seminarian. So had a little bit of a foray in that. Yeah.
Well, and that's what we want to talk about today. And I have to already comment on Father's melancholic personality. We just talked about that with Bishop McGuire, and I just like how you fixed the camera so that our heads are equal. I really appreciate that, Father. No one else has ever done that before, so thank you for that. The Father pulls off a first in the Catholic Family Podcast, fixing the cameras that I didn't do. So appreciate. See, I have all these issues with melancholics, but see, there are definitely some positives. I'm going to tell Ian that one of them is putting us at the right height. Anyway, so today we wanted to talk about a really common issue. I think people are going to be nodding their heads, those especially who have teenage children, and that issue being that so many youths today and teenagers and even older teenagers, even young 20 somethings, have an issue with being motivated and finding a quote unquote path in life and just getting started in the world. And it's something that we see really strongly right now. And I think that's around the world. I know it's the same in Germany. I know it's the same in the US. I've heard from people in both places that say it's really kind of catastrophic. And I guess what we want to talk about today is I guess a few things. First of all, is that something that's only in our time? Has it never existed before? Why does it exist, now perhaps more than ever? And then hopefully we'll talk a little bit about how can we fix it? How as parents can we solve this issue? How do we give them motivation? How do we help them move forward? And and if anyone else is listening, and young people are listening, maybe they can themselves figure this out and get themselves also moving in the right direction. So, Father, thank you very much for joining and also being patient with my internet connection issues. And I guess now we can finally get started.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think it's a great topic. One that is particularly pertinent as time goes on. I've thought about this. I'm not in any way a psychologist or anything like that, but I like to listen to professionals on the topic and think about it. And I wondered if part of the foundational problem here is a sense of reality. And that's why I figure probably this has been a problem for as long as we've been around, especially in this transitional period that every person goes through. You're going through incredible changes. As we know, being a teenager is not so easy. Your body is changing. You're getting these hormones that change the whole attitude, your whole outlook on life. And so, like I said, there's a bit of a change in your reality. You're transitioning from being a child to, trying to be an adult. And there's that whole idea we've heard many times of finding yourself. That can be maybe over dramatized, get into, mushy feelings about it. And then that certainly could be incorrect. But I think there's some truth in that concept of not knowing who you are. And that can have a lot of different forms when you're a teenager. You've got your friends, maybe even different friend groups, and you treat those friends differently than you treat your family. And you're really just discovering all of these new things, and it's confusing. So, I think that is a universal thing. And I could see how this concept of being confused and having your realities changing, being compounded in an incredible way in our modern society, because you have basically an unlimited amount of realities in a sense. You've got the internet, you've got social media, you've got people on Twitter pulling you this way and people on Snapchat, and you've got people, and it's this whole confusing thing of who you are, and you're not in tune with actual reality, the reality that is right here in front of you, the reality of getting your life going, getting a job, getting actual purpose and meaning in your life, that it goes beyond what your friends or acquaintances think of you, So maybe a little bit of a rambling assessment there, but I have a feeling that this is a universal experience for the most part, and it's gonna of course depend very heavily on your own temperament, and maybe even more strongly on the way that you're raised, how quickly you can get out of that funk, if you want to call it that. You get into this period of malaise and you realize, okay, I have to do something with my life, and it's going to require extreme effort. Well, if you don't have the proper foundation there, if you don't have the example of parents, or perhaps the proper teaching, well, you might stay in that state of malaise for a long, long time, and maybe even never force you. You get worst case scenarios. You get people get into their 40s that still live in their parents' basements, and they got their fingers are greasy from Cheetos, and they're on their computers. That's the worst case scenario. But there's a lot of questions one could ask. How do you avoid that in the first place? How do you get out of it if you find yourself in it?
Well, and I guess it's, as you said, it's different for personalities. I imagine if you as a melancholic were to fall into it, it would be more probably through not depression, but kind of the darkness. Oh, can I succeed? But well, for me, I'm a phlegmatic. It's much more of a just an actual, just like And actually, for me too, as a phlegmatic sanguine, and I fell into this in my early 20s, unfortunately. And it was so much of it was that I had this, exactly as you said, it was an unreal expectation of the world. Like I had this great dream of what I wanted and what I desired, and I wanted to do this and this and this, and this was my dream job and my dream future. And I never connected that really with, to ever achieve any of your dreams, you have to work really hard. I mean, and I think that it just, my mind, my phlegmatic sanguine mind was like, okay, it's going to happen. I'm going to send out all of these emails to people around the world to be a sports commentator, and someday one of them is going to just work. Just bam.
Here you go. Yeah, right. Boy, yeah, it's one in a million or less, those sort of situations that Hollywood glorifies. You get your country girl who takes off her glasses and makes her hair nice and goes into some high rise, and all of a sudden it's like, that's silly stuff. Like, no, reality is work. You are not going to get anywhere in life without work. And I think that's something again, maybe it's from decades of influence of Hollywood. Maybe it's I think that's a big problem these days on social media platforms. All these get rich quick schemes, that all these financial gurus is like, do this every day and you'll be, a millionaire in a year. It's like, no, that's not true. That for most people, it means, yeah, you're going to get a job at McDonald's until you are on your feet enough to go and pursue an apprenticeship or some education to get a more career oriented job. And it's these basic steps that are people put a turn a blind eye towards these realities. I saw a little tidbit of an interview by Mike Rowe. If you remember him from Dirty Jobs was his big thing. And it was fantastic. He was talking about just this thing, especially for men. It's like, man, we've lost the concept that, no, actually, getting your hands dirty and doing real work is fulfilling. It's not necessarily an end, it's a means to an end, but it is fulfilling, and men especially are losing out on so much by thinking that they can, you know, uh, live in some comfy penthouse and make money on YouTube, and it's just like, "Nah, these people end up miserable."
Well, and I think it's a great point that it's not that this work we're talking about is not just it's not just to survive. It is actually also for your happiness. Like working actually does make you fulfillment. It actually does make you feel like, wow, I earned a paycheck. I pulled my weight. I'm doing what I need to do. And you see these people, even people who get get big amounts of money, from their parents, that they've never had to work a day in their lives, that they're rich from birth. So often they're unhappy. Money really cannot buy happiness. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's very true. I mean, now if you've earned that money to a certain extent, yeah, sure, because from your own blood, sweat, and tears, that is kind of yours. Your land. I mean, I'd say all the time on the show that I think God really, in many ways, made us to be farmers, or to be outside, to be using our hands to do work. And we live in an
Right.
age where that's not the case for everyone, and that's fine. I'm not saying that's bad, but it does show you too how important it is even to be out in nature and stuff. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, I suppose, but not to just sit in your basement and eat Cheetos, because it will be a never ending cycle of ick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, it's you're contributing to society and you're doing something good. I mean, in your own small society, which is family, but at, society at large too, that you're, like you said, pulling your weight. Uh, I, I it's not reality in so many ways, but I love to think of things kind of in the binary, like either it's black or it's white. That's how God is. That's how morality and the church always has been. Either it's good or it's bad. Are you contributing to society and your own happiness, or are you not? And I think that could be asked of even careers these days. It's like these. Oh my goodness, I learn of these crazy things from my eighth graders. They call them Twitch streamers,
Hmm.
and and stuff like that. Like I saw this video of somebody doing this crazy repetitive action, and like, oh yeah, that's like NPC Twitch streaming. They get paid for every time they do this repetitive action. That's like, what in the world is that? And you have these guys dressing up like girls to be these Twitch streamers. It's like, my goodness, that these people. I mean, I hope the best for them, but I'm pretty sure they're going to wake up one day and find themselves absolutely miserable, because that you have to. I think you have to say that there's no way that is adding in any positive way to society or anybody's true happiness. And then you could get into, of course, other even worse avenues of employment. But yeah, it's interesting. That's um kind of back to what we were saying originally, that reality, people are so out of touch with reality, what is right here before us, and what it means to be fulfilled and what it means to be happy. And I think that's with young men, that and young women too, but talking particularly of young men, that is a really dangerous thing. You are trying to find out reality. A lot of times you get out of high school, that life is really simple in high school. And you can even struggle greatly in high school, because like you're fighting the status quo. You don't like homework, you're whatever the situation may be, but at least life is simple. Your day to day is pretty predictable. But then you get out of high school, and then again your reality changes. You're just like, okay, boy, basically I'm on my own now. I have to figure out not just what the big picture is, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, but even the day to day. And I remember that right out of high school, I was like, okay, yeah, find a job. But while you're looking for your job, like every moment of the day, I mean, time can slip by so quickly, just because uh, you're not. keeping good track of your time. You're not organizing yourself like your teachers and your parents organized you before. And yeah, you can slip into this hole where time just dissolves, and I guess there's this newfound sense of freedom, quote unquote, and you're just like, oh, okay, I can do what I want. Yeah, it's a mistaken understanding of reality, and a mistaken understanding of happiness as well.
Oh, it's like, and I've mentioned it before. It's like, hey, I had the choice once I was living on my own. I could go eat a box of 6 chocolate donuts every day, and I could, and honestly, I often did, and yeah, so I got fat and I got unhealthy and I felt miserable, and I still kept eating the chocolate donuts. But it is one of those things that you're so you're so dumb in these times. I mean, I know that's kind of harsh, but it's just kind of true because again, your brain is still growing. You as a person, you're growing, and I think we're gonna get that at the end of the show about how you can help people in this in this bad circle, because I think that ultimately is the question. But it's so easy to do, and as you said, the time goes by. I had years of my life just slip away. I really just gone, and they're gone forever. And if there's any young person listening to the show right now, I can tell you, it is gone before you can possibly imagine. It's so fast, and it's just your time can be wasted so easily and so quickly, and then it's gone. It is gone forever. You can never get it back ever. It's gone. Like you can't. Those years I wasted. I who knows? I mean, only God truly knows. But I mean, maybe I could have had more children. Maybe I could have contributed more to society. That for sure I could have done. And it's gone.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it was Saint Alphonsus that said, the greatest commodity that we have is time. In fact, the value of time is the value of God Himself, because it's only with time that we can gain heaven. If you think about that, and nothing can buy time. So yeah, it's quite the concept. And then of course St. Alphonsus backing that up by his actions of he made a vow to never waste time, which is amazing. And then his life kind of speaks to that. He wrote 111 books, I think. But anyway, yeah, no, it's something, boy, if of course, as you get older, you see that more and more, especially when you deal with young people. It's just like you shake your head. It's like, if only I could, you warn them, but it's just like, no, right. Understand, please. I've been there and done that. So it's like, don't fall into that same trap. But yeah, so it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one for people to not fall into. And, like I said, I'm sure that this is something that's always been a problem for mankind, but these days it's like an epidemic,
Well, and I think but I think part of that, Father, is because there are so many choices, right? We talked about that a bit before the show about how you have, so you have all these different issues coming. Again, you're a teenage, all these different things coming up, and your emotions are wacky. Your brain isn't fully developed. I mean, it's kind of your perfect storm. And I think now you add that social media, TikTok, all these different stupidities, having big dreams, and Disney telling you to not work, follow your dreams, and then on top of that, you get out into the real world, and you go to your college, say, and you look at the list of degrees that they offer. And they're just, I think that even now some of these colleges are thousands long. I heard a commercial the other day that even bragged about how many degrees they have. And it's like, okay, I get that. I mean, that's, I understand why the college would brag about it, but it really struck me. It's like, wow, how on earth, as an 18-year-old coming out of high school, coming out of childhood, you go to a college and like, oh, that one, it's almost a nightmare.
There's no way. And you're putting your time, again, your most valuable commodity, and a ton of money into that. And, we talk about this, just an easy example of that is like you take a kid to a candy shop and they've got 18,000 choices. They're just going to be like, what in the world do I choose? And that actually is anxiety. that is a feeling of it's not pleasure, that's for sure. It's a feeling of anxiety of what you're going to choose, because you have that fear of choosing incorrectly. And then after the fact, say you choose that thing, there's still anxiety because you think, oh, something was probably better. Something else would have been a better choice. Um, so yeah, no, choice is not necessarily a good thing, and we're upping the game just a little bit from the choice and the candy. When you're talking about your career, the rest of your life, what are you going to be doing? So, not that you want to necessarily restrict that and put into this tiny little box the possible options for people. But you understand, of course, yeah, that how that problem is even worse because of this myriad, these choices that are just unbelievably, you know, have quite a variety. So, yeah, I having made my choice and God leading towards a vocation, I am very grateful, obviously, but boy, do I feel for young people who still have that choice ahead of them. It's absolutely miserable. Cannot imagine anxiety.
Well, and it makes me wonder, Father. I mean, if you think back, let's say 200 years ago, you would have had a much smaller, base of options. It just wouldn't have been that much. And I'm not saying that's good. You would have been okay. You're going to farm the land. You're going to be a blacksmith. You're going to be a soldier. You're going to be a priest. I mean, but it, I think we look at that kind of the dark ages. Oh, these terrible
Yeah.
times when the serfs all they did was farm their land and paid taxes to the kings. It's like, well, I bet you the people were actually pretty happy. They knew what they had. They knew that their options weren't that great. That their entire universe was what 5 miles square. I mean, again, to us, it's unimaginable. We truly can't imagine it. You and I are talking on over the internet. You're in Spokane and I'm in Germany. It's insane. But if you
Yeah.
imagine how small they're, how much more could you focus on the things that actually mattered in life? Yeah, and okay, I shouldn't say that. That's too harsh. I mean, obviously your career matters. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but I
Sure.
mean, if you had that set, you say, okay, I'm going to be a farmer or a merchant or whatever. I have 5 options, and I'm just going to do one of them, and I'm going to do it really as hard as I possibly can and succeed. Then I just think you have so much more time to focus on living, and of course, mostly on eternity.
Yeah, right. Well, I was going to say that, that there's another symptom of the quote unquote dark ages where you see some of the greatest monuments that men have ever erected in the cathedrals. And that's a symptom, not of their technical ability, which is pretty amazing, but the fact that they were willing to think of something beyond themselves. Because these cathedrals were started, and the people that started them never saw them finished. A lot of times they were 100 years in building, but people could see that there was something greater outside of themselves, greater than their own little short lives. And yeah, they had their minds more focused on eternity, and obviously had the means and the ability to accomplish these great works. I wonder sometimes, it's like you think of, oh, the poor labormen who they had to tend the cows and shovel the manure, and oh, that must have been so hard. Well, we don't, even in our churches, getting a cleaning detail together is kind of like pulling teeth, because people are so busy. Not that they're not willing, but people are so busy. It's like they've got this thing, that thing, the other thing. It's like they work for at least 8 hours a day, and then they've got a million other things they have to see to. So they'll try to squeeze in an hour once a week or once a month to help clean the church. But whew, it's like, okay, well, okay, what's the difference now between our attitude towards eternity and the church than it was from the Middle Ages, the so-called Dark Ages? So it's interesting. The rat race, as they call it. It's become such a it's just our society right now, so we don't even necessarily think of it because we were born into it and we live that way. But I don't think I don't think that that is necessarily good. I think that slowing down and having a simpler understanding of reality and a simpler understanding of happiness, it could be part of the solution for people in general, but for young men who are, discerning a vocation. Because again, the reality, the expectations that are so unrealistic, that I see that with families so often. It's like you've got your kids in school, then you've got your after school programs, you've got soccer to go to, and then you've got this and that and the other thing, and you're running around like chickens with your heads cut off. Where it's like, it, I don't know that that's fulfilling. I don't know if that's true happiness. So the same thing with those unrealistic expectations of men to have we got into a conversation with the students the other day about Andrew Tate. I'm sure people probably know who Andrew Tate is.
Sadly.
It's like, yeah, right. It's like, so what's the deal with Andrew Tate, Father? It's like, well, I think, well, I had several thoughts on Andrew Tate. First, I think he's an egomaniacal jerk, but I think that it's good to be motivated. It's good to be motivated, and you should be a manly man. So that part of the message, fine. But the expectations that, you should have a Bugatti and you should be proud to walk around everywhere with your shirt off because of your rippling muscles. And it's just like, that is so wrong, and if you're looking at those things as your expectations, you are setting yourself up for misery. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think, again, for us Catholics, it should be really simple. We have two great examples of manliness, right? Christ and St. Joseph. I mean, that's what we're told to look at. St. Joseph was the father of the Holy Family. And for goodness sake, he was clearly a laborer. And I guarantee you, he was much stronger than you and I, but he was also so humble. We don't know anything that he said. I mean, it's like, that's an amazing thought, that he was just so virtuous and so humble. And that's actual manliness. And that's actually, living a life of virtue, actual virtue. I mean, it's something that we've recently started watching again, the Lord of the Rings. And I'm sorry, I'm taking a big step down from St. Joseph, but I did
the same thing.
but you look at, you look at Aragorn, especially in the books, the movies too, but especially in the books. I mean, I love it, and not just him, but so many of the characters. There are virtues. They are manly and they're tough and strong, and they are self-sacrificing. And there's so many things. It's like, man, that's what you need. You don't need to be buff and have a Bugatti. Go and give yourself for your family and for your society, for your friends. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and that's I was going to bring up Aragorn too. Tolkien, a great Catholic, of course, he got it. He of course had the example of St. Joseph, I'm sure, in mind when he was writing some of his characters. So expectations are important, and parents need to be careful about pushing too hard. Or it's like, there's the trope, there's certain ethnicities that push harder. But it's like, you have to go to college. You have to be, you need to be a doctor. You need to be a lawyer. You need to be an astronaut. You need to be the greatest thing that you can possibly be. When that message is, okay, be the greatest thing you can possibly be. That's correct. But it's misunderstood. It's really misunderstood, because being the best thing that you can be is not necessarily being the lawyer or the doctor or if you feel called to that, okay, fine, pursue that. But you can be a great man and be a garbage collector. That is a necessary function of society. Again, it's a means and not an end. But you can find fulfillment in your job, and most importantly, you can, again, be that self-sacrificing man who is getting hard-earned money to support your family, to be the bread winner, and to be the caregiver that God has made you. So, again, the expectations, that idea of fulfillment, what exactly is fulfillment and what is happiness? It's such an important concept that has been so skewed by our Well, honestly, mostly hedonistic society, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too that, like, it's kind of off topic, but you have especially so many young men who, they're determined they want to, their vocation is to have a family, and so of course they're looking for a spouse, right? They're looking for a woman to marry, and for the other way around, of course, as well. And I think that if you realize that, and you want that of course it's good, follow what you really deem that God is giving you as your vocation, but then remember too that your who you are and your confidence is what so many women are going to like you or love you because of your confidence in yourself. And that confidence comes from feeling fulfilled in what you're doing. It's not going to come from, sure, some of it can come from having a six pack. Okay, I guess so. I think that's kind of true, but that is a very shallow form of fulfillment. I mean, in confidence, your actual confidence is, hey, I am doing the best I can to be virtuous, to be a good man, and then the women are going to see it. That's just how it is. So if anyone's out there really like, I can never find a woman, okay, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it just is how it is. But sometimes fix yourself. That's I said it's most of the time. I'm sure you've seen that, Father. Fix yourself. Go fulfill yourself and work hard, become virtuous, and it'll work out.
Oh yeah, well, and the concept too of birds of a feather flock together. It's like if you are virtuous and you're working on your character, you're going to attract a woman that's similar. You're not going to attract someone who is shallow and prone to selfishness, etc. So that's where you're going to find a happy union, and that's crucially important. Marriage is such an important vocation. It has to be, thoroughly thought through. Yeah, so having that concept of fixing yourself and trusting in God. Sometimes those practical steps need to be taken, but that's that's such an important idea. It's one that has kind of been made popular by that. He's a clinical psychologist from Canada. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Jordan Peterson. That you got all these people trying to go out there and fix the world and do great things and be astronauts, and they can't even keep their room clean. And that's pretty basic, and but I think that there's so much truth in that. Make your bed. If you can't get up and clean your room and make your bed, what in the world? How are you going to accomplish great things if you can't even discipline yourself that much? So maybe that could be the start of advice for those young people, especially young men that find themselves in that state where it's like, okay, start small, get control in your life by seeking first, well, I would say first and foremost, the most important things, that is be in the state of grace. It's like, if you are struggling with sin, go to confession. If you have to go to confession every week or more, be in the state of sanctifying grace. Frequent the sacraments. That's first and foremost. You're not going to accomplish, if you're not going to accomplish anything, without making your bed. Obviously, you're not going to accomplish anything worth doing if you're not in God's graces. You need His blessing. You need His grace to accomplish anything, let alone your vocation. So be in the state of sanctifying grace. And from there, start seeking those little things in your life where you can exercise some control. Again, the basic concept of making your bed. And that can branch out towards little things. I heard another thing. I can't remember who this. It may have been from Jordan Peterson as well, but I liked this idea, especially for somebody who's on their own now, kind of making their own decisions in life. It's not a bad idea to think of yourself as if you are someone that you love, that you are in charge of. If you have, say for a single person, imagine that one of your nephews or nieces has been put into your care. Well, okay, you have to manage a balanced day. You have to have a certain amount of work that needs to get done. And if the work is done well, then okay, there could be a reward for the work. You can do something fun or have some personal time. Um, and that's a kind of an organized way of thinking about yourself. Where it's like, okay, what are the things that I need to get done? How am I going to organize my day so that I get accomplished what needs to be accomplished? And then, if it gets accomplished, well, give yourself a cookie. That's fine. But be organized. Don't just be following your nose. I think that's a big part of how we end up in this downward spiral is we don't try to organize our brain. We just follow our nose and take each day as it comes at us. Don't try to formulate a plan. So I think that's going to be a big part of getting out of that rut and maybe even avoiding it in the first place is having a plan on the, and you can't make a plan in the big scale necessarily, because that's the whole quandary. It's like, okay, what do I do with my life? You can't just write down on paper, oh, I'm going to do this and then do it. But you can do that on a daily basis. Okay, today I'm going to apply for jobs here, 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 and here. After you wake up, say your morning prayers, make your bed. You're going to get that done. I'm going to pray my rosary at this time, maybe while I'm driving here or there, make that daily plan. It doesn't have to be, of such a strict regimen, like you're a monk or a saint. It can be balanced, but make a plan. I think that's so important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as again, Jordan Peterson said, take the responsibility upon your shoulders, because again, leading back to fulfillment, that's actually what young men want. And it's interesting, since we've mentioned it a few times, I think especially his earlier videos are fantastic. I can't recommend all of them. He has some wonky ideas. He's not a Catholic, clearly. But some of them, especially his earlier ones, are just fantastic. And they're so good at telling men what they actually need to hear. Not the, oh, follow your dreams, go do what you love. No, he's like, hey, yeah, make your bed and take the responsibility on yourself. Find responsibilities, look for responsibility and put it on yourself, because that's what's going to make you feel better immediately. Even as you say, even if it's the little things. And I think it's a great idea, looking at, acting like you have someone to care for. I can tell you that's really the thing that changed me, was having my first child. Was like, that was when, unfortunately, it took me that long to really click. And I'd clicked a little bit before then, but that was when it was like, boom, oh my goodness, I have to work, and I have to work hard, because I have no choice. I have a little child who depends on me. And so I think, that's a great point. If you can even imagine that, do it. And I think, and imagine, and I think part of it too is this lack of self-confidence, this idea of, I just can't, pump yourself up. I mean, Andrew Tate does it by, imagining Bugattis and big arms and stuff. But I mean, I think you really can't pump yourself up to be like, hey, I really can be something. I really want to be something. I want to shape my society. I want to be something special. And I think, again, as long as you do that virtuously, do it. Pump yourself up.
Yeah. And of course, from an ascetical theology point of view, for our relationship with God, it's important to remember, truly, we have been created for greatness. God gave us our existence so that we could become saints and nothing less. So if we were to think of it from a spiritual perspective, which is really the most important, you are destined to become a saint. I love, of course, the idea of Saint Teresa, the Little Flower. She was given that name, Little Flower, for that reason. She said, I might not be a rose or a lily or something grand, but if I could just be a little violet, I'm a little flower, but I'm still God's flower. I'm in His garden, and that's pleasing to Him. So no matter your talents, you might not have the looks, you might not have the body type, you might not have the intelligence to do things great in the worldly view. But that doesn't mean that you can do great things from God's perspective. And that's such a beautiful thing when we look back on the lives of the saints, the variety of saints. You know, you have little Saint Germain, who was a simple little cripple, you know, but she loved God with all of her heart. She became a great saint. So many examples. Saint Bernadette was not great in school, not overly intelligent, but the Blessed Virgin appeared to her, not, you know, a learned theologian, you know. So, but you know, there's an entire spectrum of ability out there. Nevertheless, God created us for greatness, and that's the attitude, you know, every one of us needs to have. But I think that's something that gets very lost when you're in that transitional period. You know, very often the spiritual life tends to suffer, again, because, you know, you had that structure before. You had your parents kind of keeping tabs on you. You had maybe school to keep your day regular. But it's so easy when all of that is taken away from you to just kind of collapse spiritually, because your legs are, you know, made of jello in a spiritual sense. So getting back on track there for young people to take it now upon themselves to build that fire of fervor in their own hearts, you know, because nobody's building it for you anymore. You're going to get inspiration from the Holy Ghost, of course. He gives that freely, but you have to put in the work. Again, we said, you know, reality is work. That is more true in the spiritual life, even than temporally speaking. So it's, you know, you have to set about building that flame of fervor. Do your spiritual reading, pray your rosary because you want to, not because you're being told anymore. And it's hard, obviously. You know, it's something that not just young people, I think every person alive struggles with that in some degree. But in this age group, you know, it's really of the utmost importance and foundational that you have a spiritual outlook on life, and that, you know, you have that goal first before the other goals. Become a saint. The rest, in a sense, will take care of itself. But yeah, build that motivation.
Well, so Father, I think we've covered pretty well how someone who's in this funk can try to fix it. I think, you know, spiritually work on yourself, work on the little things first, make your bed. I think that those are, I think, to me, sounds like very good practical advice. Now, how would you practically advise, and this is a tough one, but how would you practically advise a parent or someone who's looking after a young person who's struggling with this? You know, so maybe the young person isn't going to listen to this podcast, so the parent needs to do something. And I know you mentioned before that the proper course is not to go and, you know, kick him around and him feel bad. So what can they do? And it doesn't even mean that what they do is going to work, I suppose. But what are some things that they can try at least?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess to back up a little bit, maybe before this becomes a problem, there's a little bit of preventative work that could happen, you know, and I guess that's with good parenting overall. A lot of times these things become bad because, you know, responsibility wasn't instilled into people from a very young age. You know, you can start training a child towards emotional maturity at a very young age. And I think that if you're not looking towards emotional maturity in your children, starting, you know, really with the age of reason or even earlier, that's where the monsters come from. I think that you get later on where, you know, they're so immature emotionally and even spiritually that it's like, boy, that's where they can dig themselves into a really, really deep hole. So some a little bit of preventative work there, and that's probably that's a big enough topic for probably a whole podcast in itself. But
sure.
For parents that have teenagers or young adults who are in this situation, yeah, I would say, first of all, letting your impatience show itself is always going to be detrimental. You know that your teenage your children are already frustrated. That's really a big part of why they're in this state of mind. They're frustrated with life, they're frustrated with themselves, whatever, the other circumstances are. And if they know that you are disappointed and frustrated, well, there's a certain amount. I mean, you got to be honest. I'm just like, hey, I sure would love for you to get off your bum and get busy. That can be conveyed, but the overall attitude, I think, has to be patience and just literal encouragement. Where it's like being upbeat and positive, not being sarcastic and putting them down. That's easier said than done, of course. But especially, it's like the discipline for parenting really has to change as children get older. The simple discipline, a lot of the, do that, why, because I said so, that is necessary when children are young. But as you get, especially into your late teens and really into early adulthood, that does not work. In fact, it creates a division usually between a parent and child, where you're just like, hey, I'm not a kid anymore. Don't treat me like one. So you need to start treating your teenagers and young adults a little bit more like adults. Granted, you're still the parent, but trying to, talk to them on a level. It's just like, hey, I get what you're going through. Like, I was your age once. It's really rough, but let's figure out, let's come up with a plan. And if you're listening to this podcast, maybe you could do a little bit of footwork for them, help them come up with like, okay, what would be a good plan? What would be a good schedule? Maybe we can get a handle on these little things. Can I help? And that I think would be the most beneficial attitude to have towards that. And then the details, the details need to be figured out parent to child. It really is a specific thing how to figure out the exact details. But having
so people can call you to get detailed advice for their children. Is that
me? No. Figure it out yourself.
No. Right, exactly. You're on your own.
No, it's good for parents. I mean, if you're really in a quandary, hopefully this kind of media helps to give a little bit of a nudge in the right direction. But don't don't hesitate to call a priest and see. Well, okay, Father, here's the situation. What are some good ideas in your mind? That could be helpful.
And I have to shout out Father Zepeda's podcast, The Catholic Wire. He has a great series about parenting. Or I guess it's mostly for parenting for mothers and fathers. So it's a separate series. So it's kind of he had a men's retreat and a women's retreat that he did once a month. I think he's still doing it, but some very good podcasts. I'll try to link to them. It's a series of maybe 10 total videos, some really good stuff. And one of the things he mentioned that really struck me that you mentioned here too, Father, was how if you have an issue with your child and you approach it negatively, mentioning yourself, you immediately lose. Like it's immediately lost. So if you say, you're causing troubles, you're causing me troubles. Your issues are making me. It's affecting me. And it turns immediately exactly. I'm disappointed with you. You're making my life hard, and it actually immediately turns it so that they're immediately defensive. Like that's like they have to be defensive because you're kind of attacking them not for them but for yourself. And it was a great point. It's like, okay, if you actually, and you of course you love your children and you want them to grow, you have to approach them and saying, hey, you're damaging yourself. If you act like this, you're going to suffer for it. If not now, then in eternity. Don't put it. Don't bring it back and say, "Hey, I'm miserable because of you," because it cannot work. And I think it's a great point. And again, Catholic Wire. I'll try to attach those links to the show if I remember. Yeah. If not, then someone remind me to do it. But they're very good.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's just as a side point. It's like if a parent can't exercise self-control and overcome their own emotions in dealing with this child, you're not going to affect, and that's the thing, your child sees it too. They see how you are treating this and overcoming yourself or not. So, yeah,
hey, little Johnny, control yourself. Well,
yeah,
yeah, that's a great
I'm
example
so
of
sick of
control.
yeah,
No, it's a great
yeah,
point,
no,
and I guess as a parent, I mean, it is things that there are hard times. That boy, I can tell you right now, I got a 1-year-old who shrieks. He's like a little Nazgul in our house all the time, and eventually that does get pretty rough. But you do see that you have to learn as you go, but I think you do have to remember, try to keep yourself out of it, and especially keep calm. I think, as you say, Father, that's so important. That if you don't, what are you teaching them? Your kids learn. They look at everything you do. They look at every blink of the eye, and it's incredible. Some especially more than others. My daughter is just unbelievable. She sees
oh
everything,
yeah,
and it just shows you, if you make one mistake, one thing you say wrong, one loss of temper, that's going to affect them, and maybe deeply affect them. So, boy, and as you say, it all starts, I'm sure, as parents too, be in the state of grace.
yeah, right.
Gotta start there.
Practice what you preach. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, and sadly, this is just rough. It's just the way that it is. But yeah, one blow up, one venting can ruin a lot of work done. So self control on the parents' part is necessary. You cannot affect any good without it. So yeah, no, there's none of these things are easy, of course, but uh, that's life. If it were easy, it wouldn't be worth doing. Which kind of goes back to our original point, where it's like, reality means work. That parenting is a vocation, and you have to put real work into this vocation, not just follow your nose, but read, listen, think, pray, and put work into raising your kids, even as they grow into adulthood.
And I think we can also convince our young people that the world is going quicker and quicker into the basket, into the trash can. And that being the case, that's a negative, obviously. But as it does, people who are virtuous, people who do work hard and put their backs behind anything, and I see that in my own life. Anything that you do with a little bit of gumption and a little bit of effort and a little bit of you know virtue, I suppose, you're going to be
Yeah.
noticed. You're going to succeed because nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to work. So, and I think that's what you can teach your kids. These young people who are struggling. Hey, first of all, you should want to be great. You can be great. And I can tell you, if you even put a little bit of work into your life and just a little bit of effort, you're going to find success. And that's going to be the other cycle of good things that happen. Because once you get going, once you get your feet moving, they typically keep moving, and you can really,
Yeah.
your life really moves on. I can tell you that from my own experience. Once I finally just said, okay, I just need to work, everything just fell into place because it just does. It's just like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And yeah, you have hard things in life, but things work out when you're just working hard. Do hard work. And I do think we need to try to really motivate through optimism. I think as you say, and really, try to get them to realize, hey, look, if we're in the end times, then you have the chance to be the greatest saints of all time, right? Isn't that what they say? So here you go.
Mhm.
I mean, if that means being a priest or a sister or a great parent, do it. I mean, don't sit around, because I can tell you, these wasted years at 17, 18, 19, 20, well, it's going to lessen your likelihood of being something great.
Right. Well, and I love that. I love that idea about, and this was true of all of the saints. You know, you don't have to be an ascetic. You don't have to sit in a quiet cell and listen to Gregorian chant. The simple matter of fact is, no matter what you're doing, like you said, do it 100%. Play 100%. Just like that Saint Philip Neri. If it's time for play, then give 100%. If it's time to relax 100%. If it's time to pray, give 100%. If it's time to work, give 100%. And that's the way to sanctity. And it's the way to true meaning in anything that we do. To give ourselves completely. So yeah, I guess that's the overarching idea of everything we're talking about, you know, and it gets down to the details and how to figure that out. Hopefully, you gave a few practical hints as to the how to do that. But yeah, give 100% and help other people. You know, remind them, be encouraging. It's amazing how often people they don't make themselves be the forces for good in the world. That you know, you go out there, even if it's in the grocery store or at the gas station, be the person that asks how their day is going and actually give a genuine smile. You know, that sort of thing. Don't just wait for the world to you know, affect you. Go out there and do it yourself, even in really small ways. But yeah, be that force for good in the world and start simple.
Awesome, Father. I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the time, and I hope that everyone else who made it this far and who watched this video did as well. And please like, share, and subscribe. Do all of those things so that this does get viewed, because this is something that I think, again, is deeply affecting our world. And if we want our world to go anywhere that's not into the basket, well, we need a bright future, and that bright future absolutely starts with you know, the effect that we can have on our children or anyone else who's watching this. Go, yeah, exactly. Be the change you want to see in the world. Father, I really appreciate it. Until next time, I'm gonna get you on to talk about how you can affect the youth in raising children so that this does not become a problem. Maybe I'll get you and mom and dad on. That'd be a good show. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that another time. But Father, until then, God bless you.
Thanks, Kevin.